important day, and I'm very happy today. Today's a culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people over the last 2 years. And I want to take the opportunity to thank some people. Particularly, I'll start with Chairwoman June Speakman, who's been an outstanding, June has been outstanding, and she has led the low and moderate commission. She's done a phenomenal job. And we have some other legislators there, and I want to recognize them for their hours of effort and the many hours of effort and time and tremendous talent. My good friend, leader Mike Chippendale, and Representative Josh Giraldo, who've also been on the commissions and worked very hard. And it takes a village to get things done, and I want to thank them, particularly Mike for everything. I mean that sincerely, my friend. Thank you. Members, and I have to also, of course, but let me just finish, Chairman Tom Della, who's done our Land Use Commission. Tom has been, thank you. I want to point out that all of the members on these committees have served hours and hours, meetings, all on a volunteer basis, all across the state. Top-notch talent, people who understand it, who live this every day, who help create the opportunity for solutions. And it doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen easy, but they've worked very hard. I really want to thank them all for their efforts. Tom is the planner in in Central Falls and Johnston, and he's found time in his private license, he retired from Providence, to come and help us. And Tom, I'm eternally grateful for that. I want to thank all my colleagues in the House, and I'll go through them, who sponsored some of these bills today. I want to thank the Rhode Island planners, Ashley Sweet in particular, who's been a great help and with a lot of experience and recommendations. As everyone knows, we are experiencing a housing crisis in Rhode Island, and it's a homelessness crisis as well. Our state simply does not have enough housing. And the folks at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum are feeling the brunt of it. Today, I want to discuss my 2023 legislative agenda, which is focused on the production of housing. This is an exciting day, as my colleagues and I will introduce a thoughtful, creative package that seeks to achieve goals that we can build upon in the coming years. The legislation is in no small part due to the feedback from the countless hours of work put in by many volunteer members of both commissions and advocates from across the state. I hope that all stakeholders will continue to engage with comment and feedback as we enter the hearing process on this legislation, which will be introduced today. I want to note that I anticipate at least some of this package will be changed as we go through the process. That is the process. Just as much as we created the product of these bills was based on feedback, we're going to get more feedback as we enter the legislative process in the House and the Senate. I look forward to collaboratively working with everybody to achieve these goals. I'm very proud to putting forth what I believe is a substantial package of legislation that intends to make the permitting process for development clearer, more streamlined, and standardized, no matter what part of the state you're in, eliminate unnecessary conflicts and barriers in the permitting process, and encourage production. I want to emphasize this next point because it's very important. Nothing in this package forces communities to build more affordable housing. And none of this legislation circumvents local decision-making ability. This package does not take away any local permitting control for any project. It does not cost the cities and towns any money whatsoever. It amends the statutory process and enables legislation which will govern all local authority in its first regard by ensuring the development process are standardized throughout the state, streamlined, and not intended to prevent certain right by development to be delayed. Safety regulations, DEM regulations, fire code regulations are untouched. Those will all remain in place. We're streamlining the process, but not at the sake of safety or the environment. This legislation seeks to remove obstacles such as the current lengthy appeal process before boards for all parties, abutters, landowners, and developers, in order to provide certainty over property rights and financial investments so they can move faster through the process. Major decisions will continually be made locally, but under specific standards currently outlined in both state law and local ordinances and regulations. We will remove barriers and streamline the process, but the decisions will be made locally. Nothing will prevent a city or town from denying an affordable housing project or any project except their own consciousness. Rhode Island is losing residential developers to our adjacent states due in large part to the red tape and length of the current permitting process. Rhode Island has been home to some of the most significant development in the past years. Development that would not have been possible without state and local authorities understanding the need and the benefit for development and the willingness to work towards streamlining the process. Last month, I read a report on Channel 12 that said we are dead last in the country with new building permits. That's unacceptable, and that needs to change. The ultimate goal of this legislation is to make it easier to develop housing at all levels, including low and moderate income, workforce housing, and market rate housing. This package provides mechanisms necessary to build more units of housing over the next couple of years. Beginning next year, to provide rental and home ownership opportunities for all Rhode Island. All of the bills, with the exception of one, which I'll get to in a minute, do not go into effect until January 1st, 2024. Does not apply to any projects in the currently that are in the permitting process. They will remain under the current structure. That's all open to negotiation as we go through the hearing process, but I picked that date because I don't want any of this legislation to change the rules in the middle of a game for any project. There's one particular bill Chairwoman Speakman has regarding ADUs, accessory dwelling units, which I believe will go in effect in July because that's already existing current law and it puts restrictions on it, and I'll get through them. I'm going to briefly go through the 14 bills, and then I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have on housing issues. The first bill I'm the sponsor of, is a Low and Moderate Housing Act. It goes into effect. In the short version of this bill, it amends the current acts from a 3-step hearing process to a 2-step hearing process. It, again, remains in the local control. It doesn't change who makes the decisions. Nothing in this legislation changes a zoning board member or planning board member. They are all appointed locally, and they will all remain locally appointed as well. This will streamline the process. It's the same process we currently exist, but it will be shorter. It'll be a 2-step process instead of a 3-step process. The second bill is sponsored by Chairman Craven. It's regarding subdivision and land development permits. And it would standardize the process so it's the same process throughout each city and town. Currently, right now, you could have one particular project that has a whole different permitting structure in a different town. It's really unnecessary. It becomes a guesswork for a developer. Again, the decisions will be made locally, but it would be based on the same process that everybody can follow. The third bill, as I mentioned earlier, is by Chairwoman Speakman. It's regarding accessory dwelling units. It already passed last year. We're making modifications within that to hopefully allow the requirement of ADUs under certain circumstances. 1, it must fit within the existing footprint. 2, it's for lots only over 20,000 square feet. 3, the ADUs are limited to 900 square feet. You're going to ask, why do we pick those numbers? Because of the work of the Great Commissions. That's what's working, particularly in San Diego, but other places throughout the country. In addition to that, it makes it very, very clear that ADUs cannot be used for transient use or Airbnbs. This has been a number 1 priority or number 1 or 2 priority of AARP, and I want to congratulate them for bringing these issues to the forefront. This is critical that people be able to stay close to their families, live with their families, and do so without violating local codes. The fourth bill is by Chairman Casey. It's a comprehensive planning bill, and it simply removes the justification or excuse, depending on your point of view, for local communities to deny a project if their comprehensive plan is not current. Currently, 2/3 of the communities in Rhode Island have comprehensive plans that are 10 years or less, and that makes them current, but 1/3 of them do not. And this plan, there's no financial penalties for any of the cities and towns. Some communities have not updated their plans for 20 years or sometimes even longer, and they use that you're not as a basis for denial. This removes that. They can deny a project for a bunch of other reasons, but you can't say that you don't meet the requirements of our plan when your plan is over 12 years old. The fifth bill is by Representative Leona Felix, and it's a TOD, which means Transit Oriented Development Pilot Program. This is a program that I will be working with, and we will be working with Secretary Pryor. This is the one piece of the legislative package that will require some state funding. We don't know exactly yet if we're going to use some of the already allocated money from last year that has been unspent, or we're going to allocate new money. I want to congratulate Secretary Pryor. I look forward to working with him. We've worked very well in the past together. We're going to try to incentivize high-density developments around train stations and bus hubs. We think that there's a great opportunity for high-density development without the need for automobiles. It's good for the environment, it's good for development, it's good for the community, and this program, again, is enabling. No city and town would be required to do it. They have the opportunity to do it, and will provide funds to incentivize them to do it. The next piece of legislation is by Chairwoman Alzate. It's the adaptive reuse and redevelopment. This is a very interesting concept. It's something I've been talking about for a year. It takes abandoned hospitals, factories, mills, churches, and allows by right the development of residential housing. Cities and towns will still be able to control it through local zoning for requirements on parking and landscaping, but the thought process behind this is if you have a hospital or a mill that has high capacity water use and high capacity sewer use, we should be able to put residential housing in there. Hopefully this will make it easier for a developer to look at Memorial Hospital in Pawtucket and say this is a great opportunity for housing. I know I still have to go to the local community for some approvals, but the very biggest and the heaviest lift of a rezone would not be an impediment to them. It would only go for, as I said, mills, hospitals, churches, high density factories. If we're having industrial uses where trucks and deliveries are coming in and out, manufacturing is happening in the development, we can certainly have housing in there as well. So I look forward to having a robust debate on that as well in hearings. Adaptive reuse is by Chairwoman Alzate. This would, I just went through this project, this would allow religious facilities, schools, and high-density developments. The next is by Representative Batista. It eliminates the SHAB, the State Housing Appeal Boards. Let me explain to you why that's so critical and what it would actually mean. The State Housing Appeal Boards is an intermediate appeal process. You go to your local approval for appeals, for approvals, you get appealed, you go to SHAB. Because of the nature of SHAB and the big board that it is and their requirements to fulfill the jurisdictional requirements, it takes a long time and a long process. And then you go to Superior Court. So this would eliminate SHAB. It would eliminate it in December 31st of this year. Any appeals currently in SHAB would continue. Again, I don't want to change the rules for anybody in the middle of the game. If you have an appeal, it will continue even beyond January 1st. But anything after January 1st would just go right into the Superior Court. It's just faster and it's easier, and 90% of SHAB cases end up in Superior Court anyway. So this would eliminate that middle layer of an appeal. You have your local hearings, Then you would presumably be approved and either billed or denied, or somebody would want to appeal an approval. You'd go to SHAB, be caught up in SHAB for about a year, and then you're into Superior Court for a longer time. So this hopefully will expedite that process, incentivize it. I see some of the Rhode Island builders here who the appeal process delays it. Costs go up, materials go up, labor goes up, interest rates go up, and all of a sudden a project that looked feasible a year ago, 2 years later isn't feasible. The next is a bill that I'm sponsoring, and it has to do with creating a land use calendar in the Superior Court. This is something that we've talked about in this General Assembly for several years. I know there's been some resistance in the past from the courts, but we have a calendar for guns, we have a calendar for drugs in the Superior Court, and I think we should have a calendar for housing issues and land use. And what that simply means, it's already existing under law, but it would expedite the appeal process. So I look forward to working with Presiding Justice Alice Gibney, sharing her thoughts. We had a very brief phone conversation. She is happily recovering from some minor surgery. She'll be back at work soon, and I look forward to working with the Superior Court. I think the time has come. I think the time has come that we need to look at real estate as more of a necessity, and I think we should just expedite the decisions. Nothing in this bill changes the requirements or the permits or the jurisdictional burdens you have to meet. Those would all be reviewed the same way, just expedited in a faster calendar. The next bill is inclusionary zoning by my good friend Chairman Abney. And right now, under the low moderate housing act that requires affordable housing, there is no density bonus. We require, as we should, some housing developments for communities that don't make it to put part of their housing stock or their proposed development as affordable. And that's a burden, and that sometimes it's a burden between doing a project and not doing it. So we've picked a number, and it's just a number that's open to negotiation, but that would allow a 30% density bonus. That could be changed to 20% or 25 or 35, and I'm looking for input from the local communities and from all of the advocates. But if you incentivize, you'll get more affordable housing. So this would incentivize a density bonus of up to 30%. This is how it's being proposed, and it's not necessarily how the end product will look like, but this will hopefully increase more private development. If you get the theme of all these bills, it's to create more opportunities for the private sector to step up to the plate and build more affordable housing. The next bill is zoning standards. Right now, the zoning standards are all over the map. We have some case law, we have some statutory law, and we have some local ordinances that all conflict. This takes the current law and standardizes it into the more than a mere inconvenience requirement, and eliminates the financial gain requirement and the least necessary relief requirement. All three standards have been used, applied, and misapplied in any given zoning case. Chairman Craven's very skilled at this. He's very comfortable with this, and this identifies that. Again, as I stressed before, you'll hear the theme, all of the decisions whether to approve or deny based on any standard is all left with the local community. Representative Sherry Cruz will be sponsoring a bill to eliminate the fees for rental applications. This is a very important bill, and I know Representative Morales, I don't know if he's here or not, has also been working on this with a slightly different version. So I know Representative Cruz and Representative Morales will work collaboratively to hopefully come together with a bill that they both can support, but it eliminates the fees you pay for applying for housing, for an application. This was a priority and came to us from the Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness. I read about this in a Boston Globe story, and it was heartbreaking to see a family spend $5,000 on rental applications and still not have housing, and still be denied housing. So I want to thank the reporter for the Globe who brought that to everybody's attention, and I want to thank the Rhode Island Coalition to End Homelessness. The last major piece of legislation is by Chairman Corvese, and this would eliminate the need for notice to be given by certified mail. This does not eliminate the need for notice by mail. It just can be done by first class. We pay our income tax first class. The Supreme Court takes filings. The Superior Court takes filings, all by first class. Notice can also be given by first class. We will still have the local requirements for advertising. We're not taking any revenue or notice requirements. We still want to be transparent, so the local newspapers will still advertise zoning and planning cases. And we will also continue with the requirement for online notification. And last year we passed a registry of the year before regarding notice. Those continue to be in effect. Notice by mail continues to be in effect, but not by certified mail, can be done by first class mail. The last two bills by Representative Speakman and Representative Giraldo, very important bills, maybe not as sexy as the rest of the package, but they extend the life. Nothing about homelessness and land use is that sexy these days, but it extends the life of the commission for the low and moderate commission for another 2 years. That's by Chairwoman Speakman, and Representative Giraldo at the Land Use Commission will also extend for another 2 years. I think they've done invaluable work. They've done a great service to all of Rhode Island without being paid a dime because they recognize and they care about this issue. I hope all of you, I'm speaking to the advocates, the public, and the communities, particularly some of the communities who've been opposing this package without even seeing it, that I welcome you to the table. I welcome you to come up here. I welcome you to please read the bills and understand them and ask your local planners and your local city solicitors to interpret them for you. And I bet you will see that your fear that you had, the unfounded fear, an unjustified fear, in my personal opinion, hopefully will dissipate. We intend to work to provide forms and ordinance and templates to help communities with standardized applications. I will work with the Division of Statewide Planning and the Housing Secretary to come up with templates that everybody can follow so we have a standardized zoning application, planning application. Right now we have 39 different versions of a zoning application in a small state like Rhode Island. I want to thank everyone who contributes to this legislation. I want to particularly thank Joella Roach. Joella's behind me. She is a land use lawyer and outside counsel that we just retained in the last 30 days to help draft some of the more technical parts of this bill. She's done an outstanding job. We want all Rhode Island to feel and be a state where families can have a good life, raise their children, and have options. This package of legislation is a big step in the right direction. Thank you very much for coming here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Speaker, you alluded to how
I'll ask, Mr. Nisi had I'm going to have Larry recognize, he had his hand up first, and I'll come back to you, so I don't want to play favorites.
Politeness pays off here. Speaker, it sounds like in your remarks, you're kind of bending over backwards to try to allay the fears you've heard and seen reported from some of the communities that have been expressing, as you said, opposition already to all this. But on the other end, does that mean you've had to water all this down so
None
much
whatsoever.
that you don't think there'll be a big increase in units?
No. Contrary, I think that this gives the private sector an opportunity to, and it goes into effect at the end of the year, to build more units. Their fear was mystifying to me because the bills weren't even drafted yet. I didn't even look at bills until Monday of this week, and they were opposing it, and it was surprising to me. They had heard something. Some one particular person was running around scaring everybody. I had a woman from Gloucester call me up, hysterical, that I honestly had to stop. I didn't know what she was talking about, that I was going to put a Chad Brown in the middle of Harmony. I don't know where this idea is. It's a false narrative. It's deliberate misinformation, and it caused a lot of angst, a lot of communities who, people I know were calling me up. Is it true you're going to do this? I said, no, not at all. Where do you get this idea? So no, it's not a watered down package. This is the package that came out of the tremendous work done by both committees, and this is what we intended all along. And I've shared bits and pieces with my colleagues. Nothing was changed or watered down from the so-called opposition, from the communities that were against it. I didn't feel that I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to water down anything. I let the process play itself out as we go through the legislative process, the committee hearings, where we collect public data, we listen to everybody. These are very good bills that they're not, you have to have a little bit of a background or an understanding of land use to know how important they are and what they will accomplish. Hopefully it gets rid of the red tape. I'll go to Ian and then Larry will pick you and then I'll answer.
You alluded to how housing starts in the state have plummeted since the 1980s. How would you contextualize this package in responding? Are these important steps that are nonetheless more around the margins of trying to encourage more housing starts, or are these a key to reversing that trend?
I think it's first of all, I didn't say the 80s, but that's okay. I said based on Mr. Nisi's report that I read that we're dead last in the country. But I'll let the advocates, and maybe that's a better question for the Rhode Island Bills, but here's what I will tell you. I think this package will have a dramatically positive benefit for the private sector to develop more affordable housing. And that was the goal here. And there's, other than the little bit of money we're going to allocate as an incentive program for ADUs, this package does not cost the state any money as well. We made a significant investment last year, $10 million for homelessness, $250 million for affordable housing. Secretary Pryor is going to make those investments. I look forward to working with them, and I think you're going to see positive results. And by the way, I am open to any ideas. I'm very collaborative. Anybody have ideas? I'll be happy to listen to them. This is what came out of 2 years of hearings.
Steve and Patrick.
Speaker, I do want to say, I think PBN reported the permitting thing, and we cited them. So I do want to give credit where it's due.
I read it on Channel 12, though. So.
Thank you.
Steve Alquist.
Yeah, there's also plans for publicly funded housing to be built, right? Like it would be municipally owned. And I know there's some legislation to that effect. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm working with the Secretary of Housing. I think you're talking about the Montgomery, Maryland proposal. It's very interesting to me. It's fascinating. I'm going to see if we can start a pilot program. I know that some people have big ideas. The price tag that we looked at last year was about $300 million.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to commit to a project that no other state in the country has done. But it seems to be working, for what I've been reading and researching about, very well in Montgomery County in Maryland. So we're going to try it. We're going to look at it. If we can come to agreement, I am all for putting resources. It might be resources we've already allocated behind that program and see if we can get it to work in Rhode Island. The concept is very, very positive, where the state would actually fund a particular development. And it's a mixed-use development. You'd have affordable housing as well as market rate housing. And then after the state funded it leased it all up, they would refinance it. The state would get the proceeds back, and it wouldn't go back to the state per se. It would go back into another development.
Right.
And it's a way of using it as a revolving fund to fund more housing. Right. So I'm all for it. And I think, quite frankly, Stephen Pryor has the knowledge to put together guidelines and to do a program like that, and I would fully support it. But it needs to be done right. It's a brand new program. When it was brought to me, my first question, it sounds great. What other states are doing it? And the answer was none. Yeah. Now, I don't mind being the first, but I want to do it right. So I'm very open to the idea, and I'm very positive on it.
Thank you.
Patrick.
Patrick.
Steve.
Okay. Patrick?
Speaker, the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, the 10% rule, many of the largest cities and towns in the state are exempt from it, even though they haven't met their 10%, including Warwick. One of the suggestions that came up in the Low Mod Commission was to end that exemption. Why didn't you do that?
We may do it. It wasn't brought up to me, but why are they exempt? I thought they meet the requirement.
I don't know why, because I didn't write the law, but it's if you have a certain amount of rental housing, you're exempt. Cranston and Warwick are exempt.
I think that, I don't know, but I don't think they are exempt. I think they meet the requirement because they count the housing, they count the rentals as affordable housing. But look, I'm open to the idea. If the advocates or someone who thinks it differently, I have no problem ending the exemption, if it is an exemption. But I think they meet the requirements.
And do you have any estimate of how many units, how much housing this will generate in the state?
No, and unfortunately, it's subject to market conditions. It always is. It's always subject. Broke ground this morning, cut the ribbon this morning in Warwick for 4 units. It was a very compelling story. I know some of the media were there. There was a woman there who was handicapped, single mom, children, was in a 10-unit shelter where Crossroads, to their credit, placed all 10 members in the community, and they had permanent housing. They then went back to that shelter and they converted it into 3 family units and 1 handicapped unit. To see that was amazing, but it was all based on the market conditions, and it takes a collaborative effort. That project, and most of the projects we're talking about when it comes to affordable housing or homelessness homes, require a state component, a local component. That project I talked about had a component from Rhode Island Housing as well. From Rhode Island Foundation as well. I see you sitting next to Neil Steinberg, who's been a great partner in this. But you need foundation money. That project had money from the BISO Family Trust as well. And you need collaborative money from everybody to make it happen. So I don't know how many units will this be increased. Unfortunately, for all of us, interest rates have been rising and will continue to rise at least for this year. And that will hurt housing. So what can we do that's an alternative that doesn't cost a lot of money or very little money or no money, is we can make the process easier and hopefully let the private sector do that. But that doesn't mean this package is the only thing. There's a lot of other legislators. I know Representative Speakman, many legislators have other housing bills that are all going to be under consideration. I know the Senate has some good housing bills. You know, I don't have a monopoly on, ideas that have to go. I mean, I'm collaborative. I'll listen to everybody. If it's a good idea, if the United Way can come up with a good idea and they want to make it legislation, just because the deadline is today for introduction of legislation, we have rules called 7D, which allows each legislator to bring in 3 bills after the fact. I'm all about it, Patrick. I'm all about it. If anybody has any more ideas, please come forward. Mm-hmm.
That was my question. There's other bills that are yet to be introduced, but proposed that you're open to.
Absolutely. I'm open to everything. I think you owe it to the process, and I owe it to the legislators who work really hard on that. To somebody say we're not doing this, or we're definitely doing that. That's not a good way to be a leader, in my opinion. I think you need to listen to your members. You need to hear what they have to say. You have to consider their passion. And you listen, and then what I try to do when I have a legislator who comes to me and somebody's passionate, I always try to say, look at the other side, hear the other side. I try to listen to everybody's point of view and come up with a good product.
Steve has a question there, and then Ted.
Thank you. A related, adjacent to this would be bills to prevent more people from being evicted, or like things on extending the amount of, putting limits on how much money rent can go up. Rental increases, or the amount of time. And then the other thing would be maybe representation in eviction court.
Yeah, so all of those things, we have a plethora of those bills coming in, and they're all going to be under consideration. We're going to hear from all sides, the people who affects the community. We're open to all of them. I will tell you that I want to guess, we're up to 2,000 bills in the House. We're breaking a record, and it's so exciting because you see everybody come up with great ideas and passion. Every one of those bills will be considered. Every one of them will get a fair hearing, and I look forward to them. I say, you just heard me, I don't like to prejudge anything.
Right.
So they're all in play.
Alexa?
Yeah. Are we concerned that not forcing municipalities to build more affordable housing will just keep us in the same place we've been in for several years now?
No, there are some people who say that, and if you look at the building block of where we are, this is my 3rd year as Speaker, and we've made some changes, and this goes a little bit farther, and as I like to say to everybody, maybe not now, but not doesn't mean never, so we'll see what happens, and we can look at that. I'm hopeful, and I've had great conversations with the League of City and Town chairman and their lobbyist, Ernie Almaty, who's a personal friend. But I have a lot of respect for him, and hearing him, I hear a new sense from not all, but the majority of the cities and towns that they want to work with the state to create more housing. And I think I, again, owe it to Ernie and the cities and towns to see if they will come forward and partner with us. There was recently in the town of Warren, a project was denied. I don't know why, I don't know the specifics of it. But also I can tell you there are projects that are being approved. So I'm hopeful that this process, these bills, and this wonderful media attention today will get the cities and towns to act. This package allows them to act on their own, and I'm hopeful. I'm the eternal optimist. So I want them to try to meet their way, and if they don't, and they're still against it, we'll look at what the next legislative session brings. There's always a next year. I say that all the time for everybody.
Just one other thing as well. I mean, you said that you're unsure how many units this could create as well. I mean, how are we going to measure progress before the next session?
Building permits, and building permits. Keep in mind that these, except for the ADU bill, if this legislation passes and in what form, does not go into effect until January 1st. So.
Just so you want to see results by the start of next year, so at least a sense that you're getting results out of this, but
Yes.
it's just not a wait 5 years to see if
Oh,
this
God,
thing-
no. Hopefully these bills will pass toward the end of the session, May, June, and hopefully it gives people a chance for 6 months. And by the way, nothing could prevent a city and town from acting on this without a law. I mean, they can change their regulations on their own, but they know it's coming, and I'm going to try to give them an opportunity to do the right thing before it comes. We need more. Housing is a critical issue in this state, and I can't do it alone. No one person, no one institution can. We need the cities and towns to partner up with us. We need our partners in government, the executive branch, the Senate. We need our housing secretary. This is an all-hands-on approach. We need the Rhode Island builders in general, not the association, but regular builders to build a home. We have to make it easier for more residential development in the state. Ernie, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ernie Almonte, Executive Director, League of Cities and Towns. Speaker, I want to thank you and the Chair Speakman and Della for all the work that you did. And I want to let you know that from what I heard today, I want you to know that we conceptually agree with what you said today and the overarching principles. And we want to work collaboratively with all of you and respect the fact that you listen to our concerns and obstacles, and we know they're still there, some technical issues. We want to work with you to promote housing in Rhode Island.
Thank you. Happy to hear that. Thank you. That's big.
Anyone else? Any wrap up?
Thank you. I have a session at 4 o'clock. You're all welcome to stay.